Hello everyone, this is Chip and this is another Tao of Chip. Something I did a while back was I wrote a couple of books. And I learned a few things from writing those books. I thought I might share them with you today. The first thing I learned was write to entertain yourself. If you write a story that you find entertaining, you've done something. If it doesn't entertain you, then you need to rethink it. It's not working. If it doesn't work for you, it probably won't work for anybody else. But the kicker is, if you are entertained by it, if you enjoyed reading it, somebody else will more than likely read it too. The second thing was write out your storyline, plan the story out. Don't just do it by the seat of your pants. Take a minute and do a story outline. Get your timeline in order. The chronology of the story is important. One of the roughest books I ever tried to read was written by a lady who, the story was okay, but because it jumped around a lot, I had a hard time following it. Later on, she rewrote the book, and I read that book, and it was a much better, much easier read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. The first one, not so much, but the rewrite was amazing. The third point, love or hate your characters. And love or hate the villain. You want your villains to be villains. You want your heroes to be heroes. You want lovers to be in love. And if it falls apart, you want to connect with it. If you don't connect with it, if you're ambivalent to it, if the characters are just kind of it's going to be boring and nobody's going to want to read it. So love or hate your characters. Make your villains villainous. Make your heroes heroic. Yes, bad things happen. That's part of what makes the story. Life is not Pollyanna. And it's those dramas within life that make the books worth reading. The next thing, don't give the monster up too soon. Don't expose everything right in the beginning of the book. The worst thing that I've seen done is when somebody goes in, they grab a book and they read the last chapter first. To me, that's one of the worst things you can do. Enjoy the story. Save the monster till the last scene. You don't want to expose all your secrets right at the beginning. It's like getting all your Christmas presents on December 1st. Wait till Christmas morning to open those presents. Have some secrets at the end of the story. Make it worth the read. The next thing I learned was, if it doesn't create a reaction in you, if you can't connect with the story, it's not going to connect with anybody else. And if it touches you, if you react to it, chase that rabbit. The next thing that I think is, your characters, you're going to have primary, secondary, and tertiary characters. You're going to have primary, secondary, and tertiary places. Flesh out the primary characters, give them a lot of detail, explain who they are, why they are, what they are. And you don't have to do it all in one sitting, but you do it throughout the story. Secondary characters get minimal, and tertiary characters get very little description. They're like the four guys standing under the street lamp at the end of the street, waiting on their boss to arrive. And that's life. You have people who are dear friends. You have people who are acquaintances, and people you don't even know. People you pass by on the street. So have characters like that in your book. The biggest thing that I learned from writing my books was that English grammar is important. Going through school, I never saw the need for grammar. So I really didn't pay a whole lot of attention. It didn't make sense to me. Nobody was able to explain the various sections to me in a way that made sense to me until I started writing my books. That's when, okay, why do I use a period? Why do I use a comma? And then not only that, question marks. How do I use quotation marks? How do I set up for a quotation so that it can be part of the story? You know, learning to indent the paragraph for each new character's line of speech. You know, learning to use a semicolon, because, you know, it visually it's a prettier thing when you're able to use a semicolon instead of another comma. And when I started learning that, it started becoming like learning to read music, and going through and correcting my book and using not only the grammar check and the spell check in my writing program, but also having the writing program read it back to me, I was able to hear how it worked, and it became like writing music. The words you choose also become part of that music. Are you going to use words that are, you know, very high level words that, you know, most people can't understand? Or are you going to use common English that most people can understand? I found that using common English made it a lot easier to read. The only time I would pull out the big words is when I actually had a character that would use that type of language. It made the reading a lot better. And then the next thing I learned was, good or bad, you're going to have these dramas in life, and it's those dramas and how the characters go through them that makes the story. So write it out. It may be simple and stupid to you, but it's part of that character's history. Write it out. And this is a big part of it right here. Number one thing should be at the top of my list. The backstory is the story. If the character has a backstory, write it out. Don't just let it sit there in the ether. It is part of what makes that book interesting to read. Write it out. Get that backstory into your book. You'll appreciate it later. So that's a little bit of what I learned from writing my own books. I hope y'all have enjoyed this. Y'all have a good day, and God bless.